Very good evening, everyone, and welcome to all of you in yet another important GAPSULE 16th edition session uh, initiated by DocMode. Uh, that is called GAPSULE. GAPSULE is an initiative which is a first of industry dialogue series, which has aimed at bridging the knowledge gap between the healthcare industry and medical practitioners for better treatment outcomes. Today's discussion is quite interesting one for all the pharma marketeers because as we know that brand marketing is something which is having a fulcrum called marketing messages, marketing communication, and my our marketing communication is very much relied on some key important points: how my brand messaging is being done, have we included the right brand essence story into it, the point of differentiations into it, and to create all this brand messaging stories to make sure your brand longevity, brand recognition amongst the right customer is happening or not, be it a doctor or a patient. And to make this all brand essence story in a creative way, a very important pillar of this is required by our strategic creative partners. These strategic creative partners is just not the creativity guys. They are the source of income in terms of creating right brand life into it. And today we are very fortunate to have subject matter experts from the marketing communication standpoint. I would like to welcome our first panelist, Mr. Atin Roy. He is a senior vice president, Ogilvy. Welcome, Atin, to our important sessions today.
Thanks, Udit.
Vinay, can you just move on this another slide? And we have the another speaker with us. So Mr. Atin Roy is a senior vice president at Ogilvy as of now, and he has been indulged in different marketings of brands like from the P&G house, Nestle house, along with GSK Global. He helps to develop the strategy and integrated communication solutions. He also conducts workshops in digital design and messaging. And an entrepreneurial venture, Wonderworks Media Company, a new age brand and communication consultancy. And during his stint, he was also part of a team that developed Roshni, a medical drama of Star TV India. Welcome once again, Atin, and it will be very interactive session today. And would like to know your piece of wisdom about the marketing communication.
Sure,
Our
thank you
another
so much.
panelist is uh, can you just move on? Our Mr. John Mathew. He's a president at Havas Lives Sorento. Welcome, John Mathew, and
Thank
for
you.
this important session. John Matthews is the president of Havas Life Sorento, which is a healthcare vertical of Havas Group. And having spent most of his career in advertising, and he has been more than 2 decades of cumulative experience in digital marketing, content marketing, e-commerce, has worked in different advertising agencies in India and abroad. And obviously, the pharmaceutical companies giants like Cipla, he has worked with them, Novartis, and Glenmark. John is a graduate in science and postgraduate in management and alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. Pleasure to be have here, John, for this important session.
Thank you.
Our
Thank
last
you.
but not the least uh, panelist is Mr. Srikant Subramanian. He's a vice president at Wunderman Thompson. Welcome, Sir Srikant, to the important session today. And he has overall 18 years plus experience in advertising, marketing, and digital work. He has won several awards for campaigning in diabetes, vaccines, and respiratory categories, and has experience working on overall 100 brands in 15 plus therapies. That's a very big veracity, Srikant. Campaigns and content that Srikant has been part of span categories from the illness to the wellness space in healthcare in India and the global markets. Once again, I would like to welcome all three of you to this session. And without taking too much of time, I think the first and most powerhouse communication setup, what we generally intend to do through the brand marketing is, do I know my target audience? That is very important. And today's my target audience is the marketing communication guy. So how they do perceive what is happening in the market after post COVID, a general overview to set the concept so that we can have further deep dive into it. So I can, so that we can start from Atin. What is your overall concept?
Thanks Udit for this question. Very interesting. You know what? Post the pandemic, it's very interesting to see how suddenly in the pandemic everything stopped and brands started getting onto the digital brand wagon, right?
Mm.
And post pandemic, we are seeing the shift back to the physical world. Suddenly, doctors are seeing screen fatigue in terms of the emails. They're not opening the emails. They're saying, okay, why don't you come over? So it's a weird kind of a scenario that is happening. Suddenly, there was this entire burst of activities on digital, and now we are seeing of that flattening out. I think it's something that we must keep in cognizance of the hype cycle, right? For every technology, there's the hype cycle. There's an initial
True.
flux. It rises out of the proportions, and then it fall peters down, and then it plateaus over. I think in healthcare also, digital is hit that ceiling, and now it's coming down, and eventually it will plateau at a certain place where digital rise along with the physical interaction with the doctor and create the so-called phygital universe that we are talking about, right?
Understood.
where uh,
Understood.
where all the channels, offline and online, and the other channels will give a more complete holistic experience for the healthcare
Mm.
professionals, and brands will be able to connect to the doctor in an omni-channel environment where a message will be cohesive. A sort of an experience that Netflix probably gives you is what we are looking at in the future. I think in the healthcare HCP medical marketing domain.
Very aptly said. And one more important thing is, uh, what happens is the plateau suddenly has come because when there is an opportunity, suddenly everybody has start getting something into it, and but suddenly that has been gone down because still the customer is not prepared for that for the long time
Yes,
perspective.
yes, yes.
That's very true on point of it. Srikant, your point of view into it.
I'm having the time of my life, to be very honest. I'm loving the way it is right now.
Right.
I think that because there's so much, I think flux is the best way to put it, right? In terms of just approach to things, and it also, I'm also seeing a lot of my customers or my brand managers kind of wanting to experiment, right? So I see that there's a lot of like really interesting things happening, and like Atin said, of course at some point it'll stabilize,
Mhm.
maybe not, because we I think we'll just keep setting new normals after new normals after new normals, right? I think that's where I'm just having like an absolute ball, figuring out what to do, how to do, where to do, and just having a lot of fun, honestly. I think it's an exciting time for all of us.
I totally agree. The word I can catch up from you is like experimentation.
Yeah.
But the veracity of that experimentation, how much is depends on the brand manager's perspective for their brand. That's very true.
Yeah.
How about John? What's your point of view in the way?
So first of all, Udit, thank you for having me in this discussion, and thank you, High Talk. Um, see, in my perspective, during COVID time, many of these changes were brought in because there was no other option in front of us. We
True.
wanted to talk to our customers, and then we looked at the easiest possible solutions that are in front of us at that point. And if you look at the customers of a pharma company, they are one of the most pampered lot as compared to any other customers or consumers in the world. Now, when they are getting everything in a platter, why they should go for a self-help module, for example, or any of that kind of thing. At that point of time, there's a requirement. Everyone was having a lot of time. We could do a lot of activations. But over a period of time, that has changed. Again, it had gone back to the old relationship marketing model. And that's what happened in the pharma industry as well. But having said that, there are few changes that continued. For example, probably the webinars might have continued. Some of the key, multi-channel activations might have continued, but not to the extent that it was happening earlier. But most of the activations, what I see is going back. And when pharma companies are doing these digital activations, also they don't see much value, and I wouldn't blame them for that. You know, uh, to me, I mean, being a digital marketer myself, I don't really consider the objective of digital marketing is to force fit any of the upcoming technologies into everything that we do. Uh, Mainly because people give value only if something is making it convenient for them, something is making it effortless for them. If technology is making it effortless, yes, people will embrace it. For example, look at Uber, Ola, all services that we usually use, or GPS, because it's making things effortless for us, it's making things easier for us. But other things we need not actually force it. So even when we are looking at new technology options that are available in front of us, we should first look at it from a marketing standpoint. Is it really required? Are there better ways of doing it, or is this the best way to do it? So if it is the best way to do it, and which I think some of them are, then I'm sure it will sustain, or it will not sustain. That's my perspective.
Bang upon. I think all three of you have touched a very important perspective, that the whole fulcrum is center specific to a brand manager. And in the brand manager story, if they knows who is his customer, what is his willingness in accepting which kind of message from which channel, then that particular messaging becomes more successful, because then registration is easy. If I am branding something which is in tier 3 cities, I cannot send them a digital marketing campaigns because it will completely fail. So what happened in last 2 to 3 years, every single company, every single brand tried to mobilize everything through digital. The doctor was not knowing exactly what I have to do. And that created that flutter, that resistance from the customer standpoint, that why I should do all these things. They came back to the same old way of doing the marketing gimmick, because that's what doctor is absolutely free in terms of doing it. So with that, I think a very important question which comes up is, what do pharmaceutical brand managers thinks about medical communication, or do they still relate it to the tacticals like LBL communications or kind of brand reminders? What's your point, Atin?
Right. So I think there's a little bit of mindset shift that we need to do. Right. I would not call them pharma brand managers. I would call them brand managers who are managing pharmaceutical brands. Right. And there's a reason why I'm saying this. Right. Just like in the consumer universe, where there are strategic initiatives and there are tactical initiatives, brand managers who manage pharmaceutical brands also need to do that, right? Everything has a place, right? But because of the interaction that we have with the doctor, right, the continuous pressure of going to him with something fresh, or the likelihood of signs being very heavy, right, in the communication. So there's a innate pressure to create excitement, and that falls on these small activities that you want to create excitement and continue to be on the top of mind, right? And I think it is rightly placed. That is also there in the consumer universe as well. There is nothing wrong with it. What needs to be, however, dialed is from a very medical marketing point of view, we need to move to a more human focused kind of, and we must realize that even doctors are human beings, right? The scientific content with that they go, it needs to need to be made more humanly digestible, and because the digital is giving us that opportunity, right? For example, a scientific content can be made very gamified, correct? A strategic point of view can be presented in a continuous, like Srikant was saying, always on content format, which is in context and which is at scale, right? These are some things that if it is presented, and I think the responsibility lies on us, I think
Yes.
Srikant, us, and John, as communication experts, we need to show to the brand managers that, hey, this is the possibility, right? And this is where you can, because every touch point is an opportunity to build your brand with your end customer, and that is what we need to again and again emphasize for all the brand managers in this pharma universe, because a brand is not in one point of time. Brand is not what you say it is. The brand is what the customer says it is, right? So
True. I
that's
think
my point of view in the entire thing.
very basic, very simple context for the brand manager's perspective, how they have to think from the marketing standpoint. They they generally directly jump into the tactical standpoint rather than thinking from the strategic angle. So which creates a lot of gap. Shrikant, what is your solution to it?
I mean, I think just to take a cue from what Atin said, I think the human aspect of the doctor is something that I have seen a lot of my customers take into account, in today's day and age. Right? Because I think they realize that, much more than before, it's the time that you get with that doctor has to be utilized much, much, much better, right? And therefore, where before there used to be this, typical standard 3-cycle conversation where you say, my top doctors get 3 meetings and my, other doctors get this meeting and so on. I think it's more about saying, okay, what can I do with this one? And let's call meeting in double quotes, because essentially now that meeting is a mix of offline, online, email, web, WhatsApp, etc. Right? So what can I do to make the most of it and essentially to drive that recall? And I think that's one part where they also understand that the doctors today are. I think what's interesting was just a little bit of maybe dope is. So I run projects both internationally as well as domestically, right? It's actually significantly more expensive to enroll an Indian doctor into a knowledge portal than it is to enroll an international doctor into a knowledge portal, right? I think there is a fundamental reality there, especially because of the ratio of doctors to patients and so on, also, right? So the brand managers also now realize that, because again, for them also the world has changed, because now large multinational companies are consolidating their marketing programs into one single large campaign as well, right? So they're also saying, okay, what's happening in LATAM, what's happening there. So, they also understand that. So yeah, I think continuing the human aspect, I think that's what I see is probably the next, let's say, thought process of the, as Atin put it, brand manager of a pharmaceutical company.
Rightly said. And that's very rightly said. John, what is your context when I see that prescriptions brand, digital marketing, and maybe in the two categories which I want to split? One is the duration of brand messaging to the doctors. Number one is what has to be, create what kind of messages to be created. Let's say very cluttered market, 50 odd plays in the brand, in the market. How do a brand manager create a right digital communications for his particular brand in such kind of scenario?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. See, if you see the patient treatment continuum, which starts with creating awareness, then a patient or a consumer, relating to that particular problem, then they are moving to probably a screening or a diagnosis, and then seeking out treatment, and then management. There are many steps involved in this, right? But traditionally, pharma companies are focusing only on the treatment part, and some of them probably these days, in the name of pill plus service, probably adding the management part also into that spectrum. But no one is really looking at the entire spectrum and try to address intervention points that are available across this particular spectrum. Now, as a pharma marketer, I think that's a first step that they need to look at the entire, treatment. I mean, not just the treatment journey, the entire journey of the patient, right from awareness to treatment to management, and identify all the avenues in which they can interfere and communicate. And that's where the digital can actually play a major role. And that's not been looked at it. If at all, if someone is doing some activities here and there, most of the time that's been looked at as a tactic, a very short-term activity for one cycle, and after that they will lose interest. And that's primarily because they don't know how to measure it. There will be questions about return on investment from the senior management. True. They don't know how to answer it. And fundamentally, this is happening because when they started this activity itself, they were not sure why they are starting this activity, what they're trying to achieve through this activity. Exactly. Okay, and they will talk about some technical words which wouldn't make sense to any of the practical marketeer, so seasoned marketeers out there. So even they don't know, because they are also coming from a very traditional marketing background. So naturally they would think that this is waste of money. So many of these activations go waste. That is not because it's not required. These days I see that some of the major pharma companies are actually investing in, digital therapeutics, separate divisions for that, things like that. But even then, what I realize is they don't have enough budget to run these sort of initiatives. They will take budget probably from the marketing budget. They are trying to do with whatever they have. That's insufficient, and in the process, they will not be able to really move forward much. And that's what I feel.
Right.
So all three of you have given very interesting question to me. What are the key 3 or 4 things which you feel a brand manager should inculcate in his day-to-day practice to to think on a very disciplined way in terms of creating a right brief that this is my problem, and on this basis problems, what is my intent of creating a campaign, and how they have to relate this to the Marcom teams so that they create a right buzz into it. That is one of the biggest challenge which I feel brand managers keep moving up whole month, that what should I create every month to make sure there is a right noise level, making my brand a clear positioning amongst the other market, brand competitors. What are the key 3 things which you want to say to brand managers? Work on these 3 abilities.
Right. So, Udit, I'd like to go first on this, and this kind of brought back a very interesting thing that I had read some years ago. Eric Topol, in his book, "The Patient Will Now See You," right? He quotes a quote from somewhere which says that the most underutilized person in the healthcare environment is the patient itself, right? So any brand manager, for the first time, when he starts thinking of anything he needs to do, he needs to first talk or think about his patient. What is it, right? Patient first is the key of healthcare, because even the doctor is thinking patient first. The doctor has the best interest of the patient at his mind, and if you talk to the doctor about the patient, I think you have much better chance of finding a space in his mind or positioning yourself in his mindscape, right? So the first thing you need to understand is what are the pain points, what is the life of the patient, and how am I making an impact there as a brand. And that impact is what you take to the doctor and present to him, said, hey, let's partner together. Obviously, as a brand, I come to you. As a brand, I am trying to make an impact, and I need your expertise in that. And that, I think, if that becomes the stance of a brand manager, I think he will, like John was earlier talking about, the purpose in healthcare brands are easier to find that way, because then you are relevant and you're finding your place under the sun. So that could be a starting point.
Interesting, very interesting. Any points from Srikant?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll just take maybe a step back from what Atin said. What the conversation I generally have is, I kind of ask the brand manager to think about the dashboard for measuring what the brand manager wants to do. Really, I think if you think about, and the one question I always ask is, 3 months from now, what is that one thing you want me to come back to you with, right? I mean, forget 3 things, forget 5 things, forget 10 things. What's the one thing, right? Is it do you want more prescriptions? Do you want more awareness? What is it that you really want, right? And I think after that, you kind of help craft that, visual dashboard of this is what I want to really achieve. And I think from there, everything else takes shape, right? Because that's where there's more clarity. I think that's how the brief comes to life, right? Where you're saying, and you can kind of work backwards from what do I really want to achieve and kind of take it back. And so, okay, here are 3 things that I need to measure to achieve what I want to achieve. And then therefore, what do I need to do, and so on and so forth. That's pretty much what I think.
Sounds interesting. I think it's a connect what Atin said, that this dashboard is a kind of visualization which every brand manager has to create it, which covers every single aspect. Basically, it's like what are the barriers, what are the enablers, what are the patient's scenarios into it. So different perspectives, if you craft it and you start putting it in a proper way based on the brand and the disease what you are taking care of, you will overall get the nudge of it. That's very important. John, any further point you want to add into it?
Yeah. So, see, having worked in both sides, at both the client side and the agency side, one thing I realized is today brand managers are quite aware, okay, and they are well trained. In fact, companies are spending a lot of money training them in strategy.
Yeah.
I had seen that in my previous organizations. Um, and as compared to the previous period, I think they are more clued on to everything. But what happens is when it comes to implementation, how much of this is actually being practiced? Again, they go back to traditional wisdom, and most of the time, that's where the challenge is. I think this training should not be just at a theoretical level. They should also be taught how to work with agencies, because I think when it comes to working with agencies, absolutely no discipline. And we always joke about the deadline is yesterday kind of a thing. While it's been taken as a joke, but we can clearly see that there is absolutely no discipline. Having worked with both global clients as well as Indian clients, I can always see that this is happening because uh, what has been taught is not practiced. That is one. And going back to the traditional practice and not even trying to change everything in their regular practice. Uh, and also you know working with an agency, like the way they work, for example, they want to go and stitch a pants or shirts for them, and that's the way they work with an agency, and most of the time it doesn't work. And these things, I think agents, the brand managers definitely need to be trained. It is not just about learning about the higher ops or bigger ops of trade, but it's also about how to work with partners, and that is something that I want to emphasize on.
Yeah, I think you hit the right bullseye. Actually, what happens is when you start doing a brand plan exercise, aspirations are quite ambitious. But by the time you finalize a brand plan, everything goes into the tactical part of it, rather than how the strategy has been made and how you want to craft it. So that thin line, gap is something which is the most important part. And generally some brand managers, or because of some kind of pressure, or because of some kind of leniency that okay ye to chalta rahega, they go on with the same kind of trends. So the biggest thing which every brand manager I think should learn about that if you have a right context set it up based on the strategic building what you have done for your brand perspective, it has to get implemented. Then only the strategic agency partner will able to copulate the same into the right campaign shift, which is somehow it needs to be educated properly. And I think it has to be very exhaustive exercise over course of the year, rather than just before the brand plan season ek do mahine mein jo ho jata, that should not be the right actually context of it. Very interesting question coming out of is, what one trend in your opinion will have the biggest impact on pharmaceutical marketing over the coming 12 months, and why? Anybody can volunteer.
Um, I can give one example. We are currently experimenting with this tool called Mid Journey, and essentially it allows us to create images, right, of specific situations, right. So before we needed to talk about a particular image that needs to be created for a particular content piece or anything like that, especially for more OTC oriented brands that need social media content and so on, right, and for category awareness campaigns.
I think we lost Srikant somewhere.
I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
Atin, you would like to say something on it? In the meantime, Srikant will join.
Yeah, so to me, I think there are two clear trends that I have seen in the demands and the kind of briefs that we have received. Right, there is an increased emphasis on the entire content demand. Right, always on content, which the pharmaceutical brands especially are realizing to go out to a doctor. They need to continuously have a conversation and have a dialogue on, right? So that is one very interesting trend that I am seeing. The second trend, what I think I will hand it over to Srikant, because the same trend I am also seeing the use of AI in Marcom in healthcare. So Srikant, over to you.
Yeah, sorry. Perfect. Murphy's Law plays its brilliant role where my laptop decides to update just at the right moment. Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, basically, I don't know where I got lost, but long story short, I think what we're seeing right now is I'm able to create customized, let's say, images for for specific customized situations, without the need of an extensive shoot, or so on and so forth, right? And that's just one example. And obviously the advent of, again, these are some things that we're testing right now, right? Because uh, I mean, the point here is using AI for scale in terms of content, right? It's not just because it gives you the ability to create it quickly and create it well, of course. And of course, nothing is going to stop. Everything that we do has to be compliance friendly and so on and so forth. All those things we'll take care of. But it just plays an important role in saying how can I create scale, because I need to create more to retain their attention. So that's one definite trend that I'm noticing.
And also, I think if I can add to that, I think a lot of brands are waking up to the entire idea of how do you use data to contextualize this content that we are talking about, right? This contextualizing of the data is becoming, or the communication message is becoming very important. And it's not just about the consumer or the patient awareness drives. It is also about the doctor and his changing media habits, because the doctor is also always on these days, right?
Yeah.
He is no longer only available in the clinic, or he is no longer only available at a certain webinar. He is also available at the time when he's checking his emails, or at the time when he is probably even browsing through Netflix titles, for example, right? Let's look at it from a holistic point of view. And that is where I think a lot of brands are thinking right now, because they are at their wits' end of seeing that the 3-cycle thing will not work anymore.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
So how do you get to the next level of the challenge, or how you up your game over there?
Any interesting case you have, like currently you're working upon that, how you have to modulate the same thing? Any example?
So here's one example that Ogilvy in the region is doing, right? So this is an entire campaign about HPV vaccination, right? And now think about it. This particular vaccination campaign is going across cultures, across countries, across languages, and it is this essential ability to craft culture specific, language specific thought processes or nudges, as I say, on the digital platforms, on where the consumer is lies, where the proof of the pudding lies. That will only get them to move to actually ask the healthcare professional about the vaccination. So there are some stuff that is happening. I would say it is the beginning of a kind of a revolution in healthcare comms and health and pharmaceutical companies, and they are just waking up to this entire reality.
Brilliant. I think this is something very interesting. The AI is enabling you to provide the absolute customization based on the geography, set points, and all. And I think this can be populated in the patient education quite. John, you have any kind of encountered such kind of thing?
So I can only add to what Atin and Srikant has already mentioned. I think it's customized communication, customized content that would really change the game now. And for that, there are technology tools already available, which is underutilized, if I would say. And also, not much investment has gone into such platforms. So it starts with a simple digital asset management tool, what we call as a DAM. Okay, and then how can we actually see what is more important is the speed and the versatility of the content, which is suitable for different media, different occasions, right? So how will we do something very fast, and how will we make it relevant for a particular audience? That's the key. So I think this is where AI is really going to help moving forward. So we will be able to do it at a scale. We'll be able to do it economically. We'll be able to do it fast. So the digital asset management tools that many companies are already having is completely underutilized. How AI can really help to make it very, very useful and relevant for the customers.
Excellent. I think the marketing is going to have more challenges, but yet interesting solutions too. The another important perspective which I would like to come up is from last 1.5 year, whenever we have a discussion on patient awareness perspective, and we try to do a lot of things in patient awareness through the digital mode, we got some kind of analysis that the acceptability is good, but when it comes to implementation and getting the right context from the patient's angle is just 1%. That's the biggest gap. So if I deliver, let's say, a campaign through a digital manner, even an in-clinic way of doing it from the doctor's perspective, but the acceptance or the usage of that particular campaign in the patient's angle is just 1%. I've seen some very interesting, very campaigns which have been done by different companies across specialities while doing the field work. I see a lot of buzz into it, but the overall usage is very low. So, what is exactly how you would like to see the gap of it?
Can I
So,
go first on this?
yeah, please go on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. So what I've seen is I have done many of these patient awareness platforms in my previous companies. One thing that we need to really keep in mind is these sort of activations are not short-term activations; they are very long-term activations. So if you are doing something like this, one, you need to be prepared for a long-term investment. You should never do it as a short-term investment; it will not work, right? Second, you need to be very clear about your objectives. Why are you doing it? What are you trying to achieve? Many a times when you are starting this sort of activations, people are not clear about the objective, and later they try to find out why they are doing it, and that time they may not get the right answers. Okay. Uh,
Yeah,
so
agree.
Yeah.
these
Totally
I'm
agree.
absolutely with you, John, on that.
yeah.
Totally agree.
So if you're doing these sort of patient awareness activations, one, as I said, we need to know the objective why we are doing it. We should be ready to do it for a long term. And thirdly, I think also, I mean, what is coming out of it? You should always have a end objective defined in the beginning itself, and what are the measurements that we are going to do. That also should be there in the beginning itself. Then we know that okay, this is where we are going to reach, right? And from there you'll again be able to start another journey. But most of the time it doesn't happen with pharma companies, and that's the problem with patient awareness communication that I'd see.
Yeah. And in fact, exactly the same thing. These are behavior changes. And behavior changes don't happen in 2 years or a quarter, right? It has to go further. Another thing is the patient is evolving constantly, right? We need to have the patient monitored or understood, or have our fingers on his pulse all the time, right? We might feel that, hey, doing a certain digital campaign might work, but is it targeted at the right person? Right? Targeting is something that we obviously miss out on a lot of things. For example, is it the right touch point that we are going ahead with, right? Is it the right kind of influence that we are trying to build on there, right? Is the influence coming from a caregiver? Is the influence coming from a digital KOL, right? These are things that we need to keep in mind while designing a disease awareness campaign. And disease awareness campaign should not be looked at as only generating a certain revenue. It is, again, I will go back to the impact a healthcare company or a pharmaceutical company can be at. Because please understand, you are as a healthcare or a pharmaceutical brand, you are at a place of creating much deeper impact than a consumer brand can ever be. Right?
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
consumer brand is talking about disease awareness, but it's
Yeah.
not their business at all. It's our business.
Yeah. So one more
And-
point I would like to add to that is many a times I think brand managers also need to disrupt the traditional conventional wisdom. Now, who does patient awareness communication? Mostly they say that, okay, if you are a leader in a particular industry, you do that because it's your duty to expand the market. That's the traditional wisdom. But why? Why can't others also do it and take advantage of it? See, sometimes we need to question this traditional wisdom as well. If you really know that what you're going to do with that particular communication, how you're going to take benefit out of it, and if you create the tools and methods by which you will get benefited out of that particular activation, you need not go with this traditional wisdom of only the leader will expand the market. So I think it's also time to question some of these fundamental understandings.
True. It's like first movers. It's not just like the big brands are taking the right step
Absolutely,
first and then you have to follow it. The market is telling the same thing. That same story is you are a small brand or you're just a small fish in the big sea, whichever kind of scenario. How you kind of relate your brand to that particular disease or to the right customers by kicking up the right patient perspective through education mode or right communication perspective through HCP mode. That has to be built about. And I
Yeah,
think
you only
John
need to know how to close the loop. That's it.
absolutely. I think
I mean,
John mentioned two things. What is that longevity of such kind of campaigns, and we see the kind of pressure what the senior authorities put to the brand managers. Do you want to do that? What is your objective of it? How long you will do that? And what is the ROI? So the ROI should not come on such kind of programs at least for a couple of years, because it takes time to develop that, establish that fact, and then HCP start perceiving this is the thing which this XYZ brand has done for my patients. And then it becomes a big thing. And there are a lot of examples like in the market. Say, for example, one of the biggest game changer was the PSP program, what Gleevec started in Novartis. It was an absolute game changer. It's a big step. And it has absolutely revolutionized the biologics market. So multiple way of seeing the perspective. I think Srikant was saying something.
yeah, I mean, so I get a lot of these, I'm go to Hindi for a little bit, but kuch to karna hai wala brief, right? As in,
Exactly.
right? That's a lot that I get. I think, and I think the one question I keep going back with is, something very simple. Like, no matter what we do, what's going to make that patient come back to whatever you're doing on their own after they see it for the first time. Let's say you use media the first time to reach them. What's going to make that patient come back the week after or the week after without you having to reach that
Yes,
patient
yes,
with media, right? I
exactly.
think I think that is the number one thing I try to have a conversation about and just say that, okay, you know obviously we're here as a an agency. We're here to give you creative solutions, right? But at the end of the day, we have to work together to figure out how to make that engagement ongoing and essentially give the patient like a real value, right? But why do you want to come back, for this? Because I mean, if you really think about it, I think if we were to be honest with ourselves, you know, uh, today on the internet you can find, again I put it in double quotes, knowledge about everything, right? Right, in that sense, right? And there's, for every knowledge portal slash campaign slash whatever you want to do, there's probably five things already out there, right? So I think to recognize very clearly why should someone come back to you on a regular basis on their own is the biggest question to answer, right? And that's what I keep focusing on, right? And it doesn't matter. And the reality is this: it doesn't, like, nothing is going to happen if you pause for 3 months, right? Nothing is going to happen, because when we take that first step, we have to take it correctly. And we also don't have to do a million things. Like, when I get a brief for a category awareness website, it's always, which, I want the doctor to be also engaged, and I want all the doctors to be engaged, and I want all my patients to be engaged, and I want 1 million videos. And I mean, I think let's, like, I think we need to just understand that, okay, let's set an objective for what we're doing. Let's see what's going to make that patient come back 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now on their own, and then take it step by step, right? Because everything it's an evolving entity, right? Whatever you're creating. So that's just my point of view on that.
Yes, I missed my apologies. Some signal. I think very interestingly said by Srikant that overall patient is important, but very important is how long that sustenance is there and how you build up and update it. It's like an iPhone. If I'm an iPhone customer, why I should interact with iPhone for a long time? Because I have that context, attached with me. I have the updates. An iPhone buyer always buy an iPhone, the bigger one, the next one, irrespective of thinking that this is so expensive. So that story needs to be built up at least from one campaign. Don't do million things. One thing which establish your brand either through your communication perspective or a patient's perspective. Very rightly said. I think that's a very important pertinent point which we have figured it out. One of the important, and the last question which I would like to ask is, what are the future possibilities for Indian medical market? because fully Srikant also mentioned something which international has something called discipline is there. The patient doctor ratio is quite significant. They have good quality time to go into all certain scenarios of brand marketing, what my company partners are giving to them. They deal into that space rather than in Indian perspective where doctors' perceptions on the brands and their companies changing based on relationship. So what is very important is how do you see through the marketing communications perspective the future possibilities in the Indian pharma market? Atin?
Yeah, sure. So, Udit, I think
Uh,
the
am I audible?
yes, yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you. Yes. So the Indian scenario, and this question has a lot of dimensions to it, right? The Indian scenario, one is we our scientific capital and our resources that we have, the talent pool that we have, right, puts us at the cusp of this revolution that we are seeing in healthcare environment. However, our medical marketing environment is still in a very let me just say ready to take off phase, where we need to first and foremost, I think we need to kind of get our marketing personnel, our people who are in the marketing departments, up to date on what is happening and where it is happening, right? That I think is a big gap within the marketing, healthcare marketing environment or the teams, right? That they're not aware of what's happening across the world, or what's the latest thing that they can do in terms of marketing communication. How can they reach out to people? There's not enough exposure, because what is happening is there are truckloads of new and innovative ways that other countries are trying out, right? And that I think is one very important part to work on, especially for the Indian medical marketing fraternity. The second thing is about this the entire consumer orientation, and I again say the same thing, because as medical marketer, we kind of get boxed into the science of it. We kind of get boxed into the rules of how things have been done, right? I think there's a need for us to reinvent the wheel a bit, and realize that it's a multipolar world, and then just to a single polar world, which is a doctor, right? So that orientation also needs to happen, where we need to bring other factors in. We need to bring in the digital environment also in, to a large extent. If that these things are taken care of, I think as we move forward, the medical marketing will evolve from where it is, given all the possibilities that are there right now.
John, you want to go?
Yeah. So to me,
I think
I would again talk about three things. One is behavioral segmentation, which is not very common even today in the healthcare space. We segment doctors based on specialty, based on the potential of the doctor, ABC class. Uh, while again, the tools are all out there, but this behavioral segmentation and then personalized communication is not still that much in the world. So that is something that we need to really change. I think that's a major change that can happen. Second thing is the technology platforms that enable multi-channel marketing. Even today, we have not reached there yet. Okay, so if we have to do personalized communication, different segments of doctors, how do we do that? What kind of technology platforms will enable that? And third thing, like Atin said, I also say that consumers should be at the front. And when we look at healthcare communication, we should keep patient at the center and then look at it, rather than keeping an intermediary at the center and looking at the communication. So I think these are the three things that should change and will change in the future.
Cool.
true,
Um,
absolutely true. True. Srikant.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot has been said. I echo everything that's been said by Atin and John here. And maybe the only thing I would add on the consumer side is also, I'll give you one example. There's an international client of mine who used Amazon Pay to help people of, let's say, less financial means to be able to take their vaccines. So they give them a 6 month payment plan on Amazon Pay, and basically said that, okay, you don't have to pay for it right now, and you don't have to pay any interest or whatever, but over 6 months you can pay it, right? That's a very interesting way of looking at like a technology, and yet getting a business kind of outcome driven from it, right? And also attracting a type of customer that you want to attract. Also, kind of, it's a different way of looking at things, and I think that's also a point of view that I would recommend all brand managers to think that it's like business out is of course the number one conversation in the long term, right? But it's also about, it's not necessary that your definitive outcome has to come from one particular channel or one particular way. So that's an example of like e-commerce and like an online payment system to kind of deliver a goal, right? So just, yeah, there's a million things you can do.
Interesting. So I think every company should motivate themselves shots be designed by all of you experts from the day one, because uh, they would go with the all kind of 360-degree behavior scenarios, be it right prescription, doctor's behavior, customer behavior, what are the key inputs goes into. They have to understood that points. So ideally, these are the some things which taking this on a serious note. I believe still there down the line, what happens is companies do not take such things on a very important, and or from the senior authorities, the kind of peer pressure talk is an exception brands, because there the communication is the main fulcrum. But to have audacity and the discipline, every brand should have a right justification and right justice to it. So this
Yeah.
is something even from the Markham universe, it has to build up, which I feel as it's a gap in Indian pharmaceutical industry that can really build up. We have some very interesting question. Most of them we have covered during our discussion. One question which actually on this question, Rajni, do you believe for category building, it's important for the pharma brand to invest for communication campaign, and does it help? Anyone can volunteer the question. Am I audible?
I actually missed the question. I wasn't
Hello.
able to hear properly.
So the question,
Do you
what is the
believe that for category
Question
building,
is
is it
for
okay?
building for pharma brand to invest for communication campaign, and does it help? I think there is some issue
I'm not
in
very sure what the question means. See, there is a strategy, then there are tactical activations, right? So both are required. If you are asking specifically about category building, yes, definitely. I mean, if a particular brand, requires that category building to, condition that particular market or make it, create that ecosystem for that particular brand to thrive, definitely it is required. But whether it is required for every brand, I don't know, may not be required for every brand. It purely depends, right? And communications and tactical campaign, I don't, in my opinion, these are not two different things. It's one and all. I mean,
it's a
you have
component of it.
a strategy, then you have tactical activations. The tactical activations could be in the form of communication, it could be in the form of an activity, it could be in the form of some other things. So you may do various things. So I don't differentiate that as communications and tactical campaigns.
Very valid. One more question, like why brand manager mostly face difficulty in defining their exact target audience? Any flowchart to help them to decide? Basic question, but very pertinent question.
So I mean, I think obviously I'll just jump in here. I think One is recognizing obviously whether it's a RX brand or an OTC brand. I think that's a distinction for us to make, right? But I think of it I think the way to understand it now is the brand manager needs to start embracing data. And I think that once you embrace data, while there are been many other ways of, let's say, categorizing it, if you was to take a like an RX brand, I think you can essentially say that I need to take a doctor from I don't know anything about my brand all the way to this doctor is today advocating my brand, right? And at every stage, once you embrace data, you know that you have this data set of doctors who don't know anything about you, right? And then you move those data that doctor to the next stage and so on and so forth, right? And I think thinking of that as like let's say a base point is like a good place, and you can kind of apply that to a very a simpler, let's say, a flowchart or a journey for even on an OTC brand, right, where you have consumers who don't know anything about you all the way to consumers who are influencing, and also talking about you, recommending you, and so on and so forth, right? I think the basis is embracing data, and then obviously leveraging that information that you get from that data into guiding people from one stage to the next stage, and then essentially plotting out why would a particular target audience drop out from each stage, right? I think it's a simple way of looking at it in the beginning, but it's a way that gives you a lot of basics of okay, how do we move forward, right? Basically.
Yeah, patient funneling is something which has to be related to that in the RX related part of it. OTC somehow needs some kind of more
Yeah,
fulcrums into it.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
it's a split wide open market. I
yeah.
think fantastic discussion. Love to have it. Requesting everyone, Atin, Srikant, John, to just give your final context message on this overall discussions so that we can close the session. I think we can start from Atin.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Udit, and thanks, Mahmood, for actually organizing this. It was wonderful to be able to actually share ideas on a platform like this, where equally expert people are just sitting there, and we're talking about things that we generally don't get to talk about, right? And we are generally taking on a brief, and they are working on it, right? But the idea that there can be much more improvement that can be done, because healthcare as an industry is the sunshine industry right now, and there's a
Yes.
lot that can be there's a lot of potential that is there, especially for marketing communications, using the modern tools that we have. So I think it was fabulous, and it was very enriching for myself. I learned a few things from John, Shrikant, and you, of course. So wonderful. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Atin. John?
So thank you, Udit and Doc Mod for facilitating this wonderful discussion. I think we need this more often. It's great that industry can come together, talk about the common pain points, the challenges that we face, and also communicate that with our customers who are the pharma companies. So we should do it more often. I think it is very exciting times that are in front of us now with many new technology platforms that are coming up. Brands are and just functional benefits. So I am very positive and looking forward for the better times ahead.
Thank you so much, John. Srikant, over to you.
Yes. Again, thank you again, Udit. Thank you for first of all, essentially guiding us through this awesome conversation. Thanks to GAPSULE and Doc Mode for this. It's been a lot of fun. I think just if I was to kind of just leave with a parting word, and if I was to be bold enough to speak on behalf of John and Atin, I would say that we are here to help. We want to essentially do more, and in this exciting time we're here to kind of have uh, essentially leverage the kind of exciting times that we have to do some great fun work, right? I think it's not just about achieving business goals, it's also about having a good time while achieving it, right? I think we have to also be excited about what we do, and I think that's what we all are, and
that's what we all want to do. So thank you.
Perfect. I think perfect end of the discussion. Great ideation, great communication debate. It's fantastic. I think all the marketers who have gone through with this discussion must have learned some great insights out of it. Thank you so much of all three of you for taking a very important time of your day. And I'm sure this will really push pharma brand managers for high qualitative marketing communication ideations.